Insane! The High Priestess walked into the police station shaking. But what she said next wasn't just panic, it was fear. She looked them dead in the eye and said, "My daughter is dead because of them." The energy backfired. It all came back. What started as a paid ritual for money turned into something darker, something she could no longer control. Nightmares, sudden illness, financial collapse, isolation, paranoia. But the worst part? It wasn't happening to her clients anymore. It was happening to her life. And she knew exactly when it shifted. The moment she crossed a line she should have never crossed. Because this wasn't her first job. But it was the first one that involved a mother and her own daughter. Two women had hired her to destroy someone. Not just spiritually, but financially, mentally and emotionally. A complete erasure. And when things started to spiral, when the energy became unstable, she did something she had never done before. She gave law enforcement names, a mother, and her own daughter. But what investigators uncovered next wasn't just fraud. It was a coordinated, months-long spiritual and financial manipulation campaign designed to erase a young woman's entire existence and steal her inheritance. That young woman was Emily Anderson, and Emily had no idea any of this was happening. While she was trying to survive, working, barely paying bills, losing stability piece by piece, someone else was already living off her father's legacy. Over $350,000. Gone before she even knew it existed. Her father, Colonel James Anderson, had left her a trust fund meant to protect her future, but he kept it hidden intentionally, waiting for her to mature into it. What he didn't account for was betrayal inside his own bloodline. After his death, everything shifted. Emily left for college, grieving but focused. Back home, her mother Margaret and half-sister Lisa began to unravel under pressure. Money was tight. The insurance payout wasn't enough, and desperation slowly transformed into something far more dangerous: control. They didn't just want access to the trust. They wanted ownership of her life. So they built a lie so precise it almost held up in court. Fake documentation, altered records, psychological manipulation, a fabricated narrative that Emily was unstable and unfit to control her inheritance. And it worked. The court approved the transfer. To Lisa. And Emily, she never saw a single document. Every notice, every warning, every chance to fight back. Blocked, intercepted, erased. But as her external life collapsed, something else was happening behind the scenes. Because this wasn't just legal warfare anymore. It had crossed into spiritual territory. That's when the High Priestess came in. At first, it was business, targeted rituals, influence work, energy manipulation meant to destabilize Emily's life just enough to match the false narrative being built in court. But something went wrong. The work didn't stay contained, it spread, and it reversed. And when it did, everything started collapsing in unexpected ways. The High Priestess lost control of her own reality. Her business failed, her health declined, her clients disappeared, her stability evaporated, and the deeper she tried to correct it, the worse it became, until she realized something terrifying. This wasn't just fallout, this was consequence. And in her panic, she did something even more dangerous. Margaret reached out overseas to a spiritual practitioner known for stronger work, something deeper, more irreversible. But that decision didn't fix anything. It intensified everything that was already unstable. And instead of protecting her, it sealed the outcome. Because what had been sent out never stayed contained. It echoed back into every person involved in the chain. When law enforcement finally connected the dots, it wasn't just financial fraud they uncovered. It was manipulation, coercion, and a coordinated attempt to spiritually and legally dismantle a young woman's life. The FBI had already been watching. Suspicious trust activity, irregular transfers, patterns that didn't match Emily's reality at all. And when they compared everything side by side, the truth was undeniable. Emily wasn't living like someone who had access to wealth. She was surviving like someone being drained of it. A week before the final transfer could fully settle, law enforcement moved in. Accounts frozen, assets secured, evidence locked in. Margaret and Lisa were arrested, and the case unraveled in real time. But the aftermath didn't end there, because while they awaited sentencing, everything inside their lives began collapsing too. Relationships fractured, health declined, isolation set in, fear grew, and by the time the court delivered its ruling, over 15 years in federal prison for coordinated fraud and conspiracy, the damage had already reached every layer of their lives. Not just legally, but personally. Margaret and Lisa's trial was talked about all over town. The community was stunned by the revelations, unable to believe that a family could stoop so low out of greed. The evidence against them was overwhelming, and they were both convicted and sentenced to prison. Margaret received a longer sentence for her role as the mastermind, while Lisa was also held accountable for her active participation in the fraud. And within the first period of incarceration, tragedy struck inside the system. The situation escalated in ways no one could have predicted. An additional loss followed inside custody, leaving the case surrounded by even more darkness, silence, and unanswered questions. Months later, another devastating outcome followed within the family structure, marking the final collapse of everything they had built their choices on. They not only were unable to escape their choices in the third dimension, their consequences caught up to them in the spiritual planes as well. By the time their final days came in custody, it wasn't about punishment anymore. It was about consequence catching up to every layer of interference, manipulation, and energy they had helped set into motion. And whether people called it coincidence, justice, or spiritual warfare, one thing was undeniable. Nothing in this story stayed one-sided. Everything came back around. Everything balanced itself out. 1 month after being incarcerated, the daughter was found in her jail cell, almost unrecognizable, completely obliterated. The scene was a complete mess. It took weeks to remove the blood stains from her deceased body. Margaret couldn't even attend her own daughter's funeral, which left her in a state of mental distress and depression. 6 months later, Margaret was found unalive in her jail cell due to self-inflicted strangulation. A total collapse and generational cutoff from spell work backfiring had come around full circle. Now their whole bloodline would never grow, all because of greed. And Emily? Emily was finally informed about the trust fund. The court ordered that the full amount, along with accrued interest, be transferred to her. The news was a bittersweet relief for Emily, who had suffered immensely at the hands of her own family. She had cut all ties with Margaret, Lisa, and her extended family, focusing on rebuilding her life. She stepped away from it all, cut ties completely. No forgiveness, no return, just distance. And rebuilding. With the inheritance finally in her possession, Emily's life took a positive turn. She used the money wisely, investing in her future and fulfilling her dreams. She opened a series of successful businesses, including a bookstore and a cafe, creating a thriving community hub. Her financial stability allowed her to pursue her passions and live comfortably. Emily also became an advocate for financial literacy and independence, sharing her story to inspire others. She spoke at events, emphasizing the importance of resilience and self-sufficiency. Her journey from a struggling student to a successful entrepreneur was a testament to her strength and determination. On her own terms, thank you for listening. If you want to hear more stories like Emily's, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And if you would like to share your personal story of spiritual warfare and be featured on Spiritual Warfare Anonymous, send your story to the email in the bio. Until next time, bye.